Hi everybody, how is it going today? So today is now November 14 and we are going to talk about MACD on a Tuesday night. So if you guys are planning on any Netflix and chill, definitely say no to that, okay? No funny business tonight, guys. It is no Netflix and chill night. It is now MACD night, okay? But before we start, guys, I need to read you guys a poem about MACD that I wrote, okay? So guys, if you guys have some company, maybe tell them to go away because we got some much more serious matters to attend like MACD, okay guys? So here we go. A poem by Philicon about MACD. Here we go. Let's do this, guys. Before this lesson on MACD, you were all children eating your chickpea. Was it useless? Like that famous singer, Houston to the Whitney? Now I will teach you some advanced strategy. Add some supplement to your life, whether it be vitamin C or vitamin D. Make sure you have an associate degree in the MACD. This indicator could have been a mischief maker. If not understood, it could be a disintegrator. Cast out all doubt, make it an eliminator. Read well enough, it will be an anticipator. You'll get so good at it, you'll be an articulator. I promise you, by the time we're done, you'll be an assimilator. The end. For those that would like a copy of this, please go to Amazon. I have it in a VHS and a beta version of it. You can also purchase it in a 5.5-inch floppy disk or even a 3.5-inch diskette as well. And they are going for about 522 Bitcoin, I believe. And for every purchase, it will also come with a media of your choice. So if you guys don't have a floppy drive, it will come with a floppy drive. If you don't have a beta player or a VHS player, I'll make sure that it's included in the mail as well, okay? Just make sure you guys know that there's no Amazon Prime shipping for this, okay? So it might take a little bit long to get there, sometime between 60 to 90 months. So just be very patient, but I promise you, it will be worth it. Okay, enough joking around, guys. It's time to be serious. Didn't you guys get it from that poem? That it's now time to be extra serious? Okay, guys, we're gonna go over MACD because it's so just OPP. But yeah, you know me, I'm the real Fibonacci. Some people say that I'm Gucci, but I'd say I'm more so Fibonacci. Wouldn't you guys agree? Okay, so we're now gonna get actually started. Okay, guys, enough of my my joking around. So for the people that don't know what moving average, convergence, divergence is, that is what the MACD is, okay? So it uses a moving average of 12 to 16, right? 12 and 16 is what I set mine as. It's the default one. And now it's a moving average just like any other moving average, right? And it's known as a lagging indicator because what has happened has already happened in hindsight. And now there are two major components that I use for here. So one is, of course, the moving average in a crossover, right? Which you guys might know, it's basically a line that moves up and down, up and down. So just to give you guys an example, you know, right here, for example, okay, what it basically means with these numbers on the side is that I'm looking right now at EOS, okay? So if we see an uptick right here, right? Uptick right here, we see that it has upticked on, I'm not gonna say the full decimal, I'll say it moves 4 pips, okay? Moves 4 pips up, and then it moved, and after the next tick, it moved up another 4 pips, right? And then this pip right here, it actually moved up 16 pips, and then that bar right there, it moved up 24, and then this one right here, it moved 28, okay? So that's how we read it as well. It gives us an indication when we correlate it to the graph, for example. I'm actually just gonna remove, do I wanna delete this? Yeah, sure, I'll delete it. We don't need relative strength index right now, okay, guys? So I'll show you guys exactly what I'm talking about here. And we're gonna make sure that you guys can see this very visibly here on my screen. So if you guys notice, right, from this point right there to this point right here, right, it upticked pretty heavily. It upticked all the way, before it was 2 pips, now it upticked 15 pips, right? So the difference from here to right there is actually 15. That's what it's referring to, okay, guys? And right here, it's actually referring to that it actually moved up as well a tiny bit. It moved up 15 pips right there as well, okay guys, on the next candle. And then on this one here down, what this one refers to is that it moved down 14, right? You see the bar here a little bit lower? And this one here, it moved down, 4 pips right there. And then when it goes to the negative side, that's when it's actually crossing over. This 0 bar line right here is like think of it as a neutral x-axis, okay guys? It's a neutral, sorry, it's like a y-axis. Am I saying it right? Yeah, it's the x-axis right here that goes left to right, and that's a 0 bar. So if it crosses over to the positive side, that means it's upticking usually. And if it crosses down heavily, like right here, it means that it's down-ticking heavily. So what we want to do is I'm going to go over so many different case scenarios for you guys, okay? And we're going to go over it case by case, 3 specific ones, for example. And then what we're basically looking for is divergence, right? Like on our side, we can confirm, for example, right here, my trained eye can tell right away that because it moved from the high side to the negative side, that there's actually going to be a downtrend, right? And we notice the downtrend happening all the way to over here about, right? But what do you guys notice about right here? Now it starts to uptick a little bit, right? It starts to uptick, so that means that we're now getting an uptrend. Is that really easy when you guys think of it that way? When you look at the histogram, right? Downtrend right there, uptrend right there. And this is on a 1-minute chart, just so you guys know. But let's take a look at it on a few different charts. I'm going to give you guys a bunch of different scenarios, okay? So first of all, I want to go over a crossing over strategy for you guys. For example, on a higher time frame, okay? I'm going to clear all of this out here because it's easier for you guys to see. And I want to show you guys a crossover strategy that we can easily use, okay? And when you guys see it, you're going to be like, wow, that was a really easy strategy to use. So have you guys noticed right here, we see it crossing over? Would you guys agree? Right here where it's crossing over, right? It's crossing over right there. And not only is it crossing over, but we're seeing, this is called the histogram. We see the histogram diverge like this, right? And as soon as it crosses over like that, it basically means a big crossover. It means that it's going over to the positive side. So if you use a strategy like that alone to enter a trade, you would be very profitable, okay? So as soon as you see a crossover right there, for example, enter a trade. It's so easy. Watch this, guys, okay? You enter a trade, you set your stop loss slightly below it, and now you wait. You wait for the crossover to happen right there, for example, okay? You can see a crossover happening right here as well. This is a basic strategy that I'm showing you guys, right? And then you would sell basically right there where it crossed over. And that's right there. And you guys would have made yourself a 17% profit with that little strategy right there, okay? But what you want to do is you have to make sure that it's in the negative side for a fairly long time, okay? Before you sell. And for example, right here, let's take a look at some more, okay? Let's take a look at, how about right here, guys? We see some major crossovers, right? Let's say you didn't see any of this yet, and you're looking at the histogram closely, okay? Here, you can actually have entered a trade as well. So let's test out a theory. I'm going to circle it right there. That's a pretty big crossover, and a rule that you have to make sure of is that it has to be in the low side for a fairly long time because you don't want to play a sideways market, right? And then after that, you would sell it right here where it crosses over again, okay guys? Right at the top right there. This is a basic strategy that I'm trying to show you guys. So you would have entered right there when it crossed over, set your stop limit right there. You would have sold it as soon as it crossed over right here, right? And you guys would have made a nice 12% profit right there. And now I want to introduce something else to you guys. So because this is a lagging indicator, it takes the previous candles, right? And you don't actually see it crossing over until it might already be too late. So one of the strategies that I use to anticipate a crossover is a divergence on the bearish side, right? If you guys look very closely on this specific candle right here, you'll actually start to see a lot of trouble of it getting higher, right? It starts to have a lot of trouble getting higher and higher. So that means that you can also automatically assume that it's converging first of all, right? And then it will eventually start to diverge. Now this crossover right here, if this was not a lagging indicator, it would have actually happened right over here. So the signal to actually sell would have been right around there at the top, and you would have made a little bit more money. You would have made 14%, okay? And that would have been a great time as well. And you guys know what else? Because this crossed over to the negative side, okay? because it started to cross over to the negative side. And after you get this confirmation right there, guys, you could actually enter a short position as well. And I do this all day and all night where I'm looking at crossovers, okay? So I would have entered, say, a short position as soon as it crossed over right there, guys. Put my stop loss right slightly higher than it, say, or even higher than the previous one. Like you can go way over there, but I'm pretty risky sometimes, I guess, conservative but risky. And then what you would do is you would close your position when it crosses over again, or you would just close your position when you start to see it flattening out like that. So if you guys entered a short position when it was flattening out, you would have made yourself a nice 12% profit there. Pretty cool, right? That's literally how easy it is, guys. And if you combine it with my RSI strategy as well, right? RSI strategy, what we would basically assume, closing it right here is, it's getting very, very low here. We have one bounce on the low side and another bounce on the low side, right? So you guys could have closed it right there as well, right? But really what I would have done is I would have actually just rode it. I would have just kept riding it because it didn't really do some major crossovers and it only went up to the positive side a little bit, right? Came back down, and this positive side on the histogram wasn't really much. So I would have actually held on strong still and just waited. Not only that, my RSI, if you guys remember my RSI rule, it actually didn't even get close to breaking above my previous zone, right? So that's now my zone right there for the RSI. Right, this is now my zone. Remember my rule for RSI, guys, is that anywhere between 60 and under, or 60 to under 20, that's still my actual bearish zone, okay, guys? So to me, that wouldn't have even been close to a confirmation to sell. I would have just rode it, I would have rode it, I would have rode it, and eventually, right, until it breaks out of this zone, right, that might have been my confirmation right there. Or I would have used a confirmation such as right here where I got a divergence right there, right? This is considered a bullish divergence to me. Even though the RSI didn't break out to higher than, say, 60 right there, I would have just kept riding it until boom, I get another bounce right there, close my position there, and you would have made yourself a nice 13% profit. Let's just keep looking at examples and keep looking at examples while I talk, okay, guys? Alrighty, here's IOTA, for example. Now, another rule that I always follow is that what eventually goes really high on the MACD side will eventually just drop and die, okay? So for example, if we entered a trade on IOTA, somewhere, I don't know, right here, for example, okay? We look at the MACD, where was it in the negative side for a long time? Where? Right here. That looks like it's been in the negative side for a pretty long time, right? That's a good signal to me, right? It's been on the negative side for a pretty long time. Pretty long time. It's now also snapped very far away from the zero line, from the middle line. So this to me would have been a really, really good indicator. And I'm just going to go through case by case by case so you guys can kind of get a really good idea of where we stand. I'm not sure what just happened there. Ah! Ah! Sorry, I'm just going to pause it, guys. I panic a lot sometimes when indicators go off. Sorry about that, guys. I just want to give you a clear example of how to never ever panic, okay? Just because your indicators go off for a few brief seconds, it doesn't give you guys a reason to panic like that, okay? So learn from my mistakes. You never panic when trading, okay? So let's take a look at this right here. What you guys notice I meant to be on IOTA. I'm not sure why I'm back here. My apologies. Okay, so we would have entered a trade right here. If you guys look on here, it's been on the negative side for a fairly long time, right? So I would have just made a note of that right here, that's been there for a long time. And the moment that this crosses over like that, okay, when it's been in the negative side for a long time, I would have actually entered a trade right around here, okay? I would have entered a trade, say right there, and I would have held strong. I would have set my stop loss to below it, right? And then now we're basically just gonna ride it until we get some massive peaks in the RSI and until we get a massive crossover to the positive side, okay, guys? This is not enough of a reason to sell, okay? Because it's still on the negative side. We want to wait after we buy very low in the negative side. We want to wait till a big crossover on the top side. So we would have sold it right around here, or we would have sold it as soon as it started to show some bearish divergence. Now let's see if this strategy of ours can actually be profitable, okay? So you guys would have sold it right around this line right here. right around this line, and boom, you would have made a 30% profit. Why would you not have sold it here once again, guys? You would not have sold it there because it did not cross over to the positive side, okay? And you would have held strong. So I'm just going to keep going over more and more scenarios. So if you guys notice this divergence right here, normally if you are not too experienced, you would have actually sold it right here, okay? Because that's where it crossed over the MACD. So you would have sold and made a 20% profit. But if you also look at the histogram and you notice it diverging like that, and you also look at the RSI and you combine it and you notice it diverging like that as well, heck, you would have made yourself an even more profit, right? Because you would have closed it at the top and you would have made a 29% profit instead. So let's just keep looking at tons of examples. Alrighty, so we're gonna look here. Where has it been in the negative side for a long time, guys? Okay, this one here really hasn't been in the negative side for that long to me because it's still sideways trend, right? What we want to look for is more of the histogram showing on the bottom side and big bars of it, okay? Because when it's in the negative side for a long time, it usually means that it will be in the positive side eventually, and it's going to snap back to the other side, because what stays in the negative long, well, has to go to the positive for a long time, okay? So right there, right, this was in the negative for a long time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to circle that and just make it a very noticeable point. And once I make that a very relevant point, right, hey, did you guys notice that the RSI is also very, very low, right? And as soon as we get this double bounce right here, this is basically one bounce, two bounce, three bounces, we get a little bit of bearish divergence right there. Let's go in a trade. So if we went in a trade right there, right here, okay guys, right there, set your stop loss lower than the previous point, say around there where you see it on the I was gonna say map, on the map, okay? And now we're gonna wait till it gets to the positive side, okay? That's not enough of a negative side. We're gonna wait till it gets to a really high point in the positive side, a super duper high point, okay? And where does it, we're just gonna keep riding it. We're gonna keep riding it, okay? Keep riding it, okay. That seems like it was in a positive side. Right here, it could have been a really good point to sell, okay? Right here, we wonder, hey, could we have sold it there? You guys wouldn't have known about this really high point yet, right? This was in the positive side for a fairly long time, and it would actually look fairly high, right? But let's say we look at RSI to confirm, okay? We look at RSI to confirm. We set our RSI right here as a support level, okay? And we wait. We look at it very closely, guys. Yes, it crossed over right there, but what we notice is it bounces off of the previous RSI support line. So are we going to sell? No, we're not going to sell. We're going to keep holding strong. And hey, it bounced off of it and it's going even higher again. That is a great point to sell because it was in the positive side for a long time. And what you also notice is the MACD histogram. MACD histogram is showing signs of divergence, right? So because the RSI also reached a critical point there, and because the MACD crossed over and also the histogram started to diverge bearishly as well, you guys would have literally rode it to the top. Do you guys notice how easy it is for me to spot these signals of where the top actually is by using indicators? And if you guys went to that specific trade, you would have made 50%. Now I know it's really easy to say that in hindsight, right? But if you guys saw my RSI video, guys, you have to understand that I use RSI rules as well, right? And I use RSI as support. And when I see this one right here, where right here, guys, and if you combine my candlestick strategy, well, right here, guys, I'm going to delete this. Right here, it's bouncing above the 55 EMA, right? Right here. So I would call this a support right there because it's bouncing off the 55 EMA. And here, guys, it bounced off of the 55 EMA again, which is also the same point as where our support RSI is. So you would have entered a trade well below over there, okay? And you would not have sold it because it keeps bouncing off of here. Here, you guys would not have sold it as well because the RSI was getting higher, okay? Nor did it cross over to this zone. If you want to be extra safe and confirm a downtrend, then you'll wait till the RSI crosses over and breaks that support, okay? So you guys could have literally entered a trade right here as well, say right there, set your stop loss low, and you could have targeted when it breaks this resistance right here. So you guys would have broken it right there, right here where the RSI is lower, and just to confirm a downtrend, and you would have still made a 61% profit. That's pretty huge, right? Now here, the MACD, now that we're in a bullish trend, guys, okay? We're now in a very bullish trend because the MACD is clearly hovering to the other side, right? It's hovering to the other side and staying there. Even though the histogram shows in the negative, where would have been a really good point for entry, guys? Where would have been a really good point for entry? 40. 40 is the magical number on a 2-hour chart, okay? So where was the previous resistance? I see a previous resistance here where it peaked, and also basically right around here as well. Would you guys agree? Right here was the previous RSI resistance, and boom, it broke it and it stayed over there. And now I'm going to use this specific one right here as an actual RSI support, okay? And I'm going to look at the histogram very, very closely, and I'm also going to look at the 55 moving average. Boom, this candle right here, guys, is a massive confirmation of rejection to the downside, because the bears, I'm going to zoom in so you guys see, okay? This one right here, the bears tried to push it down, but the bulls pushed it right back up. And this candle right there is called a hammer, okay? Not only did we get a hammer candle right there to make sure you guys have watched my candlestick video, okay? But we're also getting a bounce right there at where it was a previous resistance, which now becomes a support, okay? So we get a support on the R side there. We get a support on the candle there. And if you look on the histogram, where I was mentioning, we're looking for places where it starts to bullishly diverge, right? So we were down ticking pretty hard over here on the histogram. It met at a point right there, and boom, we start shooting up, right? So that right there would have been a perfect place to also enter a trade. We're going to enter a trade right on that candle confirmation, set the stop loss slightly lower than it. And now, guys, we're going to try to catch the top, okay? We're going to try to catch the top. Here is not the top, right? It's still not breaking below. It's still not breaking below, guys. It's still not breaking below, okay? This actual support RSI that we're drawing. So you guys right now, as it stands for IOTA, you have absolutely no reason to sell it yet, okay? But what we do notice, if you guys see here, is divergence, right? You guys see divergence right there. This is getting a series of a lower low or lower high, and this one is barely keeping afloat. It's not gaining any more ground, okay? So we know that this is also a very close time to be closing our position. If we draw a line on the 2-hour chart right here, looks like IOTA is definitely going to come down very soon, okay? Right? So you have no reason to sell it yet right now, but it will happen very soon. So if we keep looking at this, we actually see this squeezing into a triangle. Wouldn't you guys agree? That is what we would basically call a descending triangle. And this descending triangle right there, guys, is bearish. That is a sign of bearishness because we're not getting any higher high RSIs. We're on the histogram MACD itself, right? This is not really upticking a lot as well. So we can use our MACD and we can also use our RSI to confirm that it's definitely going to sell soon. So if you guys bought in exactly at this point right here, where the histogram started to diverge, you guys would have been making about 31% right there as well. Alrighty, so what I look for, guys, is I look for the MACD to be in the negative side, very well in the negative side for a fairly long time, and I also confirm it with the RSI, with it being really low for a long time, okay? Because like RSI, if it goes too low, it needs to bounce back up eventually, just like histogram, where if you see a lot of the histogram in the negative side for a long time, and this moving average, the red and my blue one there, you guys can set it to whatever color you want, of course. I look for it to be in the negative side for a long time because I know for a fact that if it's in the negative side for a long time, that also means that the RSI is incredibly low as well, okay? So for example here, right? This is a really low negative side in the histogram, and not only that, the RSI right there is super low. So we can confirm that if the RSI bullishly diverges and the histogram itself or the MACD crosses over, that's actually a really good, really good entry point right there. Wouldn't you guys agree? So you guys have to be extra patient to take these trade setups, okay? Be extra patient. Do not follow my scalping tweets too much, guys, okay? The scalping tweets of mine, they require immense knowledge of, not to say that you guys don't have knowledge of the market, okay? But it requires so much experience and reading indicators like that, guys, okay? I've been doing this a while and I think my skills are getting a lot better and every day they keep improving. But trust me, you don't want to scalp like the way I do because it might set you up for failure, since what you guys want to do is take baby steps, right? You want to get very good at reading these charts and these indicators, and then over time you slowly develop like killer instincts, you know? You develop a natural gut for it, and you develop crazy intuition as well, and then you can put two and two together. Imagine playing a video game, guys, okay? Imagine playing a video game where there's a lot of, you know, things to learn in the game. I used to play a game called Dota, right? I used to play a game called World of Warcraft, right? And I sucked at it at first, right? But over time, I eventually learned the mechanics of the game, right? And it eventually allowed me to fine-tune my abilities. And then eventually, like for World of Warcraft, I was in a guild called Paragon. If you guys are World of Warcraft fans, back in the Fireland days, I was in the top 5 World of Warcraft guild in the world, where I rated about 40 to 60 hours a week, and we slayed a lot of, you know, we did everything on hard mode. We were very competitive, and I was really good in that game eventually. And then I moved on to a game called Dota, right, where I was playing since I was really young, and I wasn't really that good at it when they released the new Dota 2, or it's called Dota now, basically, right? And eventually I got used to the game. I specialized in a few characters, right? And you know, I played heroes like Earthshaker and Marana and Anti-Mage, and I was like a position 3-4 player, and I got to be really good at it because I learned their abilities, I learned their timings, right? And it allowed me to fine-tune my abilities, and eventually I got to become like a 6,000 MMR player. And I quit it about a year and a half ago because trading kind of took over my life, because it's kind of now my new addiction. At one time, guys, I wanted to be like some superstar in Dota, like superstar, you know, like win the internationals, win like a $20 million prize, you know, play with like Valve and Dendi and all the, any of you guys follow Dota? If you guys know what I'm talking about, you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. Dendi, the little Ukrainian guy who came from nothing and he went from rags to riches, right? I wanted to be that guy. And I played Dota for like 2 years, guys, 3 years maybe, like straight. You know, after my job, I'd go home and I would just play Dota all day, and I'd be like, I am becoming the next Dendi. You will see me at the internationals, and I will win that $9 million prize, and I will hold the Aegis of Immortal. But that never happened because I quickly realized that I grew out of it, and that trading was much more addictive, and I actually made money, you know, playing the stock market. But from this whole story that I'm trying to get to, guys, is that we keep practicing, right? And eventually we will develop those killer instincts, right? So this to me, guys, is a killer instinct right here, where you guys would have went in on a trade because the MACD was really low on the negative side, right? Very low on the negative side. Then the RSI starts to bullishly diverge, so you go into position there, set your stop loss low, right? Set your stop loss really, really low, and you basically would have sold it when it got to a higher side on a positive side for a long time. So you could have even sold it right here, for example, right? It starts to converge. Not only does it converge, but it also bearishly diverges, right? Negative for a long time, gets to a really high point, peaks back up there, and you guys could have sold it, say, right here when it crossed over, for example, right there. I know that you guys want to wait to a higher side, right? But sometimes some people might not be willing to wait that long, right? So it's always good to take profit when you can as well. So if it crossed over there and it was in the positive side on a really high side, as soon as you see this divergence right there, you guys would have sold it basically, and you would have made yourself a 45% profit right there. Okay, let's look at another example. Let's look at a big coin, guys. This isn't only applied to small coins, right? So we want to look for, first of all, when it's in the negative side for a long time, okay? Like for example here, we could have played a position right there. This was in the negative side for a long time, right? We could have played a position there as well. It was in the negative for a long time. Let's see how these positions would play out, all right? So for example, this one right here, we make note of it. It was in the negative side for a long time. That's check mark 1. And also it's definitely, guys, definitely super duper low, okay? This is when a lot of stuff happened with Bitcoin. And you guys would have been like, hey, our size is really low. I'm probably just going to take a freaking chance right now, okay? As soon as this candle formed right there, which is a hammer, right? That's a really good candle for you and confirm it, right? We don't see any crossovers. You guys might argue, hey, we see a hammer sort of right there, okay? But we don't see a crossover on the MACD, do we, guys, right? No, there's no crossover there. But what we do see is a crossover right here, right? That's a crossover, which means that it goes from the negative side to now the positive side. So that would have been a very, very good short-term trade to go into, for example. Okay, so you guys would have entered a trade right here, for example, right there, right? As soon as this candle formed, as soon as you saw a MACD crossover first, okay, try to confirm it like that, you guys would have entered a trade basically right there on the next candle forming. So right there, you would have set your stop loss slightly lower than it. And then now you would have just rode it until you saw a peak on the histogram. A peak on the histogram right there. That's the confirmation that it's about to be over. And when you start to see it down ticking, okay? And when you see it down ticking, now you can wait till it crosses over, but because it's a lagging indicator, it might actually be already too late. So you guys would have sold it right there at that peak. Not only that, you would have confirmed it on the RSI as well, where it's down ticking. So right around this area is where you guys would have sold it, and you would have made yourself a 6% profit on Ethereum. And on Ethereum, that's a big profit, if you guys know what I mean. Like 6%. Just to give you guys an example, I bought 200 Ethereum a few days, not a few days ago, yesterday, right? Right after I finished my technical analysis, guys, because I was confident in my analysis, it was $310. I bought 200 Ethereum, guys, okay? And now we are up 5% only right now. It's now at $331 for Ethereum. Well, guys, that's a pretty big profit, right? You guys do the math, okay? So 5% on Ethereum is a really big number. So where else can we see something on the negative side for a long time? Let's have a look, okay? Well, this one we just, this one, yeah, we did that one already. Let's see. Let's take a look and just keep going. You know, here, it was in the negative for a while. I think that piques my interest as well, okay? This area would pique my interest as well. Right there where it crosses over. These points are not low enough for me, okay? And I say low, I'm talking about relative to how low the other ones were. When it went on the negative or the positive side there, it's just hovering there, it's just kind of hovering. And I would have looked at the RSI. This one here, it wasn't a big enough of a crossover. So what we're basically looking for, guys, is like this. I'm gonna draw it out, okay? So what we're looking for is a big peak like that. We don't want ones like that, okay, where it just kind of crosses over lightly like that, okay? That's not the one that we want. What we want is for the red line to be like this. We want the red line to be just slowly moving like that, right? That's the bigger moving average. And what we want is a blue line to be not, oops, I didn't mean to do that. What we want is a blue line to be like this, okay? We don't want it to be like that. What we want is to have a spike on the downside like this. A spike on the downside, okay? Like really far down below it, so we can expect it to snap back to the other side. This one is too smooth for me. This one is a good one because it did it many, many times, okay? This one is also a really good one as well because you see the blue line kind of snapping much further, right? And then it needs to snap back to that line. They need to stay somewhat relatively close. So this one here definitely piques my curiosity. Okay, let's confirm it on RSI, right? Hey, it crossed over. We're definitely seeing some bullish divergence right here, guys, right? We're seeing some bullish divergence right there. So anywhere around here would have been a great place to buy. In fact, a great time to buy would probably have been as soon as you see a few series of bullish divergences right there. So let's say you guys entered a trade, for example, just right here, where you're starting to see it peak right there and you confirm a bullish divergence right there on the RSI, you would have set your stop loss slightly below it to say 270 or so, and then you would have rode it until you saw a peak at the top for the RSI and the histogram. That is definitely a peak. Would you guys agree with me? And also this is a peak right here, right? Where it flattens out like that. Not only does it flatten out, but you're getting bullish or bearish divergences. So right around one of these areas is where you would be selling it, right? Right around there is a good place to be selling it. And if you guys went to that trade, you would have made yourself 10% on Ethereum. Now let's see what else we can take a look at. So what we want to absolutely do is correlate with it being in the negative side with the RSI really low, okay guys? So just as an example, this is a great example. So what we see here is this one is, it's snapped back kind of low, right? It's snapped back far away from the red line. So this one, this is Bitcoin, by the way, guys. This is the Bitcoin 2-hour chart, and it works on every single one. So we would have bought it basically right there where it crossed over, as long as we also confirmed that the RSI was relatively low and we're getting bullish divergence. So that would have been a really good signal for me as well. So once again, we have a bullish divergence, right? We see the histogram start to tick up a little bit. And we actually see a crossover, okay? We see it crossing over to the positive side, and we see bullish divergence there. So let's say on Bitcoin, when you're playing it, let's go into our long position right here. So we'll take a long position right here, set our stop loss, say slightly lower than the previous one that we see, down over here, for example, okay? Right there. And then we're just gonna ride it until we see a really big crossover. Or, guys, you guys have to remember the rule. If this right here was the second point that we use as a support to draw bullish divergence, it now becomes a support, okay, guys? It now becomes a support, and that's really important that you guys are combining all of the rules of mine for RSI as well. And I will not sell my Bitcoin until it breaks this RSI at least, okay, guys? At least. So let's say you bought Bitcoin at 5,350 there. Well, guys, we're not seeing it cross over anytime soon, are we? There we go. We finally see it cross over in the RSI, okay? So you can use it interchangeably, right? You can use it absolutely 100% interchangeably, because you guys have to make sure that we're noting massive areas of support, right? This is a big area of support for relative strength index. And as soon as it crosses over, that is a really good sign to sell. In fact, the best time to have sold it, honestly, from me, I wouldn't have known that that was the perfect time. I would have seen this bearish divergence right there, okay? Histogram's high there, getting lower and getting lower. I would have sold it right here out of panic probably. Not only that, I would have saw it crossing over right here as well, okay? I would have seen it crossing over at the top there to finally go to the negative side. I would have been scared and I would have sold my Bitcoin. So where would you guys have sold it? Right around there, say? And I also would have seen this as well. That would have scared me at the peak, okay? So I would have sold it if you guys entered a position there. You would have made 39% on your Bitcoin there. So that's just a bunch of examples, okay, guys? And it basically just comes down to buy it on a big crossover on the bottom and sell it at a big crossover on the top. So here's a big crossover on the bottom. Here's a big crossover on the top, okay, guys? And you wouldn't want to sell it there because once again, okay, guys, once again, we're going to look at some just resistances in general, okay? You look at your RSI, just draw some random points that you see that acted as a support for RSI. I see a bunch right here. I see a bunch right there. That's a good support point, okay? So you wouldn't have sold it right here because it actually never crossed over, guys. It only crossed over temporarily, but because it didn't actually cross over majorly, it also didn't even bounce. It didn't even come close to touching this support right here. In fact, it barely did and it bounced right up. So if you entered a position right here, for example, where you saw it cross over, just right there, set your stop loss slightly lower than it, okay? Sell it at the top right there where you see it cross over again, right there. So for Bitcoin, you would have went into a trade 1.44 risk to reward, and you would have made 13% of your money. And honestly, it goes to any chart, guys. Like I can go to NEO chart, for example, too, right? I can go to NEO. Let's just look for on the 2-hour chart, all right? Somewhere in the negative, somewhere in the very negative with low RSI. Okay, right here, I see it. And you guys can also keep testing the strategy, see if it works. There's a crossover. The histogram has been a negative for a long time. We get a double bounce on the R side right here as well, right? Double bounce on the R side, boom. That's a really good signal to go in a trade, just based on those indicators. Now we're basically gonna look for, let's see if we can find anything. Let's look for a support, the previous one. That was a resistance or support. I see this one right there, the next lowest point. So I'm going to say to myself, I will not sell it until I see a major crossover and also breaks to this side right there. Okay, so that's where it finally broke right here. Okay, guys, right there is where it finally broke. Then you would have sold it. You would have entered a trade, set your stop loss slightly below that one on NEO. Okay, this one would have been a risk to reward of 1.65. Then you guys would have sold it right there at 18.34% profit. Because you saw it cross over on the R side right here, and you saw it cross over right up there as well. So let's go to another chart, random chart. Let's go to ETP. Sure, ETP, let's see what we can see here, guys. I'm going to clear my charts here. Let's look for a crossover on the negative side, all right? Negative side where it was really low and coincided as well with something like right here. We're not always going to see the best points. We see a crossover right there, right? We see some crossovers right here as well, right? But here, I would not buy it because the RSI is in the neutral zone. Here, I would not buy it again, right? When it crossed over because the RSI is in neutral zone. But here, it actually crossed over when the RSI is super low. So that's a good signal for me to go in a trade, right? Basically here at this point. Now let's zoom in a little bit closer. Let's zoom in. Now, it's not going to be the best scenario all the time, but you guys need to know that it's not always going to be the best scenarios, right? So that's where it crossed over. That's where we're finding support for RSI. So it makes sense to go into this trade right there. Set your stop loss slightly lower than it, okay? Set your stop loss slightly lower than it. And guys, you're going to basically look for the next major crossover. Here, not enough. You guys want to wait till it gets to the positive side and sell. There's the positive side, and there's where you want to sell it. Here, you could have sold it as well, right? Because it started to diverge, but it never crossed over yet. Here, it never crossed over as well. And what you guys want to make note of is the previous, like I always mention, RSI, guys, that acts as a support, okay? That is an RSI support right around this area. This is a support, and it became a resistance, right? Notice when it broke out of there, it now becomes a support. So now it bounced off of there, and you don't want to sell it, guys, until it almost crosses over to right here, okay? So this is a really important note as well. Right there is a good place, for example. So let's say you sold it right here. You wouldn't have made the best profit. You would have made only 10% profit still, right? At a 1.23 risk to reward. But let's say you also factored in other signs of divergence right here. Bearish divergence at the top. You literally could have caught the top right there, right? That's one sign right there. And we also see another sign that it can't get a higher high than this one based on the histogram diverging. So just keep watching this video, guys, and just look at the different case scenarios that I'm trying to go through. Histogram is one of the ones that I really do like to use a lot. And I look at the moving average a lot, to be honest, just to make sure I see what side is actually on, whether it's on the negative or the positive side often. But what I look at the most, guys, is actually the histogram, okay? I look at the histogram a lot, actually. For example, right here, as soon as I see it bullishly diverging, and I see it in a really, excuse me there, I see it, you know, a double bounce right there. Excuse me. I'll get that back out. What the heck just happened? 1 second. Okay, it seems like my chart was pretty screwed up there. But yeah, so all that I'm getting to is that we look to the histogram, okay guys, to see where it's upticking and where we see it downticking bearishly or bullishly, right? So just, you know, right here, for example, we see it start to bullishly diverge, right? Here, we're starting to see it cross over. This one snapped. This is just Ethereum. This one snapped down really low right there. So we just, you know, I'm just showing you guys a bunch more random ones. We see it cross over there, right? We see it to bullishly diverge there as well. We see the RSI extremely low, so we could have entered a position right here, just as an example. I would have entered it right here because I saw the histogram bullishly diverging, right? Set your stop loss slightly lower than the previous one, and then you would have entered a trade until you see it also bearishly diverging on the histogram right there. So you see it right there. You would have closed your position right around up there, and you would have made yourself a nice 10% profit on Ethereum there as well. So make sure you guys keep looking at the histogram, please, okay? Always look at the histogram to see where it is now down ticking or up ticking. It is a really good time to enter a trade whenever it's extremely low, okay guys, in the negative side, and you can correlate it to the actual RSI as well. I'm not really sure what else I can talk about histogram because it's just a matter of looking for the crossovers, checking out the histogram where it's bullishly diverging, right? And you also correlate it to the RSI as well. And then once you do that, for example, if you have a high histogram on the very positive side, okay, on the very positive side, you look at the RSI as well. If it is too high, just as an example like this right here, then you know that it's going to eventually crash over to the negative side. And once that happens, if you guys notice, that's where the downtick begins, right? And that would have been a really good signal to short as well. So we see bearish divergence where it's coming down, the RSI can't get a higher high. We see a crossover up there as well. So this would have been a really good signal right around here to go into a short position. And you can confirm it as well with the histogram like that, okay? So as soon as I saw this right here, a lower low, or sorry, lower high and a lower high there, I would have entered a short position, right? I would have entered a short position and I would have rode it all the way down until it started to cross over to the positive side as well. So for example, if you entered that trade right there, you guys would have made yourself a nice, you would have sold it pretty much at the bottom, the negative right there. You guys would have made yourself a 10% profit on the downside and on the upside. So I hope this gives you guys a little bit of insight on how I use histogram and MACD and also RSI combined together, right? My favorite indicator is definitely RSI of all time. Okay, guys, if you look at Ethereum right now, it looks like it's about to crash down as well, right? We're getting a series of a lower high right here, right? Lower histogram high, and we're also getting a signal right there as well that it's actually getting lower. So it's losing strength, and it's also not gaining nearly as much momentum. So it does look like Ethereum is actually going to cross over. So there you guys have it. That is how I use MACD and histogram and also RSI. If you guys enjoyed this video, subscribe, like, blah 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 blah. Follow me on Twitter as well, and upvote it on Steemit, right? Because I like to post a lot of things on Steemit just to show the support. And you guys all know my dog, and I say this at the end of my spiel. At the end is at the end of every video. I should probably record it by now, just so I don't have to say it all the time. But you guys know my dog Luna. She's got her own little cryptocurrency piggy bank, and if you guys want to buy me a beer or donate to her so she can treat herself to some nice kibbles, you guys are absolutely welcome to donate as well. So have yourselves a great day, and I hope that this gave you a lot of insight on how I use histogram and MACD. Take it easy, guys.